your flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week. Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, and be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. And welcome to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Reverend Dr. D, and my very special guest on the program today is Sara Hathaway. She is an author. She is a seasoned expert at not only surviving, but also thriving in the competitive world of indie publishing. Sara, thank you so much for joining us on this program today.
I'm happy to have gotten connected. It's quite an honor.
Thank you very much. And of course, you and I, we do have something in common, and that is that we have chickens, you and I. And you have a flock that's probably 3 times the size of ours. We're down to 6, but we'll be replenishing, but we don't have a very large run. It is covered. And then of course a coop as well. But I got to tell you, there's nothing like, not only the fresh eggs, but there's nothing like being around, we call them our girls. Going out there. I've got one that we actually, took over for another gentleman, my wife's cousin, who this one was getting, it was in the pecking order at the bottom.
Yeah, yep.
And he says, "Hey, could you guys take her?" And well, sure, no problem, we can do that. And well, we had a similar situation. Of course, we only had 7 at that time. And yeah, she was getting a little picked on. So what I would do is I would feed her separately from them at a different end. I'd put the feeder for them at one end of the run, and I'd stand there and let her eat. But she is now pretty well incorporated into the flock. But
it's a challenge. It's a challenge to incorporate the new birds.
Well, she follows me around when I go in.
You saved me.
It's like I'm her protector now. It's actually kind of cool. I really do enjoy that part of it. But this is also part of the work that you are doing through a series that you have written. And I find it fascinating. And of course, at first glance, I will be honest with you. And I think I shared this with you in our previous conversations. I'm thinking, oh, a prepper. No, I would not go that far. Okay. You may, and you don't have to tell me, you may have a hole in the ground, okay, with supplies. You may not. It doesn't matter.
I do not.
But you have a series called the Changing Earth Seriesdedication, and the ability to thrive in multiple arenas, your passion project, and also you have a full-time job, as well as a happy family. How long have you been writing?
I've been writing since I was a kid. I always wrote just to release emotion. So I wrote a lot of poetry and stuff like that. And then I started just dibble dabbling on my book 8 years before 2014. So 2004-ish, I
Hmm.
started just dabbling on my book. And when I got pregnant with my second son, I had to go on bed rest. So I finished the novel, and my mom was like, "Hey, you need to publish this book."
Mm.
So I ended up doing that. But I have been writing just my whole life. It's kind of my creative outlet. I can't draw very well. So, release emotions and whatnot.
Well, it's what everybody's got to have a release somehow. For some, it's singing. For some, it's writing. Some people, it's exercise, running, jogging, hiking, and all
I
those
do
kinds
I
of
do
things.
MMA as well. So, that I do take care of a lot of stuff there, that's for
Uh,
sure.
MMA, tell us what that is.
Mixed martial arts.
Okay.
So I've
And
done taekwondo, I've trained jujitsu, sports jujitsu, close quarters combat, and I do like fighting.
it's just something that was interesting to you that again helped you to kind of burn off the energy and so forth.
Correct. Yeah, my mom, I was always a tomboy when I was young. And so my mom wouldn't let me go learn martial arts. She said it would just make me more of a fighter. And honestly, once you learn fighting styles, you realize that in any kind of fight, both people lose. And so once you have that outlet of getting rid of that type of tension and whatnot, and learn the styles, learn the discipline behind it, it actually curtails your urge to go, oh, they said this, I'm gonna go mess them up or whatever. And
Yeah.
yeah,
It's like you learn the techniques and you realize I really don't want to get into a conflict. You
you
know,
got it.
I
You
don't
got
want to
it.
have to use the nuclear option.
Also, I'll never be a victim. So that's my
Well, that's another plus. You won't be a victim and you'll be able to do that. And of course, a lot of folks, unfortunately, in today's world, I have to say that back in the early 80s, I was going through personal growth programs. And back then, it was victimhood. That was the big bugaboo. And then we
Mhm.
shifted from there into, what was it? Codependency. And then from there, we were able to actually shift into interdependency. But then somewhere around 2015, victimhood reared its ugly head and has been here ever since. And I'm
Yes.
sitting here going, on this program, there are no victims. We, and this is based on my book, Choices, 5 Steps for Life. We all make choices that determine where we are at any given point in our lives. Nobody put a gun to your head and said, do this or do that. Now, that's not to say that maybe there isn't some knucklehead out there that's putting a gun to someone's head saying, do
Right.
that. But by the
Right.
same token, still, that person has the choice. Hey, you know what? No, put the bullet in my head. I'm gone. I'm done. And you will no longer control me.
You got
So
it. And that's a
now,
lot of the self-defense that I teach. Yeah.
yeah, not a great choice, but nonetheless, it is still a choice. Um, One of the things that I want to talk about, of course, is your book in regards, especially the title, the Changing Earth series. And we'll get into the particulars, but what struck me so interestingly about it was the fact that it's a multiple book series, and the fact is that the Earth has been changing ever since it was created.
Yes, sir.
It's
Mhm.
not something that we have any control over. All we can do is be resilient and adapt, right?
Yes, sir.
Is
That's
that
it.
sort of the core of the work that you have done, this particular series?
It is. So when I first started out, I'm very much a nature person. So I want to protect nature and I want to share that with people. And I grew up country and I saw all these skills that like we just took for granted as far as having a garden and
Hmm.
growing your own food and these kinds of things. I'm not talking anything wild.
Right.
I hunt and whatnot. That's kind of outside the box for nowadays. But just as far as like being able to live with the earth. So that was kind of my premise. And then when they, classed me kind of that prepper category, it seemed like a lot of people were thinking that we live on a rock and like the rock's not going to change. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that's not the case at all. We're on this planet that's constantly in motion. A lot of the scientists are like, oh, these things take millennia. And there's no way that, rapid change is going to happen. Well, I'm sorry, but look outside your window, what's happening these days. Rapid change is happening. And if we forget our relationship with our planet, then literally we don't know how to survive. We can't survive. All we
Hmm.
can do is use our technology. And so we're just Achilles healing ourselves as far as being able to adapt and overcome
Hmm.
to these changes that our planet will present to us. We
Yeah.
have to be adaptively thinking. I'm also in the insurance world. So I've seen a lot of the wildfires. I've seen the flooding. I've seen the earthquakes. I've seen all these things happen, yet we're still building sticks and frames. With all this technology we have, why are we not advancing these building styles to new types of homes that are just way more resilient? Now, there are some products that are on the works and whatnot that I'm really, really excited about, but we have all this technology. We have all this brain power and these entrepreneurs in America, these creators. And it just seems to me that we could definitely go beyond just building stick and frame and trying to muddle our way through.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons why the very first house that I bought with my first wife back in Phoenix, I said, I won't buy anything other than a brick and mortar home. I will not buy a wood frame house. Now,
Right.
yes, there's wood frame on the inside to divide up to
Right.
section
Right.
off the house, but the exterior was brick, and I loved it. I'm going, wow, I can't believe the universe, set this up for us. It's fantastic. And in 1993, okay, it was 3 bedroom, 1 3/4 bath, and it had a pretty good sized backyard, and I would say 12 to 1400, is that about right? Square feet, single level.
Okay.
$43,000. $43,000.
Love it. Yep.
I
Yep.
don't know. I have a feeling. I think someone did the comps for me out there, and they said it's now probably worth maybe quarter of a million,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to saying 250,000. Although
Yeah. Right.
the house that my second wife and I were in before we moved, she owned it with her ex, and then I bought it from her, and then we did a refi under interest only and so forth, and of course moved before the balloon payment came in, and we sold it for I think 210,000, so almost a quarter of a million.
Yeah.
And we got out 2 weeks before the before the real estate market fell through back in
Oh,
2006.
wait. Oh, okay. Oh,
To,
six.
to
Yeah.
that, yeah, this was 2006. The market fell in Phoenix. Of
Yeah.
course, yeah. Then there was 2008, and that's one of the things we'll talk a little bit about. Not those specific instances, but the fact that we we don't seem to and I'm going to put it this way, we don't seem to want to learn from history. As a matter of fact, I posed that statement to one of my guests. I said, the saying is that those who refuse to learn, if we don't, we need to take a look at history so we can learn from it. Okay. And my question and his statement to me was, learn what? I'm going, huh? What? Excuse me? What do you mean learn what? It's obvious
Yeah.
because we have a great deal of chaos and conflict going on around the world today, and we aren't learning from history, and we are doomed to repeat it because we refuse to learn from history. Your books, your series here, leads me, even though, and I'm correct, it is fiction.
Correct. Mhm.
It takes real shall we say, I don't want to say historical events, but okay. I mean, I don't know how you'd say, okay, and in my fictional story, I have a hurricane and a tornado and an earthquake and a wildfire and so forth. And those are just events that we've experienced in the real world, so to speak.
Right.
But it seems to me you were absolutely right. And I was watching a video not long ago, one of those shorts on like Facebook or YouTube, where a gentleman was talking about how we have everything we need right now to make a difference, not specifically in climate change, but in terms of cleaning up the planet. And we're not doing it. We just
No,
flat out refuse. And I
it's not
seem,
cost effective.
yeah,
Uh, yeah, so that's the thing. So it's always follow the money, and there has to be money. So I have my own podcast as well, the Changing Earth podcast. And I take a chapter of my book, I take one of the fictional items from there, and we explore the reality of it, whether that be, as something as simple as shelter building or coastal water level rise. So I
Hmm.
did coastal water level rise. I had a gentleman from Berkeley came onto my show to talk about the ocean level rise and how, not to say it has anything to do with climate change, but just that we're watching this happen. You can look
Hmm.
at Indonesia. It used to be connected to Asia. Now it's islands out there in the ocean, right? So it's coming up. Whether we have a hand in it or not is irrelevant. This is happening. So I
This is
told,
true. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah. So I was like, why as a species are we not like, okay, we have all of these things that are very vulnerable to flood on sitting directly on the beach, whether this be oil refineries, chemical factories, that kind of thing. They know it's coming. They know the disaster will happen eventually. Why are we not moving these things back? And he said, the real estate is just too valuable. So you can't just start pulling off of this real estate that's too valuable because the money is not there. And the politicians aren't going to get elected when there's no money funding them for these projects. So it just never happens. And we just deal with it after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah. I
And
have to. I
so,
do have to wonder, Sarah, if I'd love to see a cost analysis of the repair and replacement of the property along the shoreline as compared to saying, no, you can't build within a quarter mile of the beach or an eighth of a mile, whatever the distance
right,
might be.
whatever. Yeah, the distances. Look at
And it would
Florida.
allow the rest of us to enjoy.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you've been out to California often, there's a stretch of highway called PCH, the
Yep.
Pacific Coast Highway.
Yeah.
Now, when my wife and I used to drive out here from Phoenix to visit her family in Santa Barbara, we might come up the PCH. And it was beautiful because you could see the ocean and the beach and the people were out there and so on and so forth. That was 2003, 2002, 2001, and so forth.
Hmm.
Today, and this was before the wildfires, you couldn't even see the ocean
Right.
because of all of the building on the beach side of the highway.
Right.
And it's like,
And
good.
why would you do that? We've known well ahead of time since 2003 what's coming.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then, of course, why would a society as advanced as the Japanese are, I've even seen a video where it says the Japanese are living in 2050, whereas the rest of us are still in 2025 because they have chosen to move forward, with one exception. They built a nuclear power plant on the coastline.
Right.
I
Easy
yeah,
access to water on a coastline that receives a fair amount of tsunamis. Like their
yeah,
island's so big, they could have been on the other side where you're not getting that tsunami activity from the Pacific. But you
yeah.
know,
It's like you just said, follow the money. And that's
yeah.
really what it comes down to. So, when we start talking about the Changing Earth series, can you give us a little synopsis, not only of the general story, because we don't want to give it away,
Right.
but does that quest for money by the characters in your story, is that part of the scenario that we're dealing with as well in fiction?
So in my story, the Great Quake happens, and it's partially because of the glaciers letting loose rapid influx of water on top of all of the earthquake activity that's happening. And we're talking global earthquake, everything moving, continental shifts happening. So all of the infrastructure takes a really big hit. And yes, a lot of people die in the incident, but there's a lot of people left alive and the infrastructure's gone. So it's more after the first book that you had, Day After Disaster, it comes down more to what does a country do after this happens? Usually it's an isolated event, and we have like North Carolina gets hit. We have a wildfire over in LA, right? There's lots of people to be able to help shift resources to repair those things.
Hmm.
But if our whole country and our whole world was hit at one time where you don't have other people that can assist other people, what do you do? So it comes down to national triage. What can we save versus what do we have to just basically rope off and be like, Well, we just don't have the resources to help everybody at once. So in my stories, I get rid of traditional prejudice, traditional politics, and we just go to landowners versus the climate refugees. And so it's a
Hmm.
really exciting concept because we get to take away a lot of that. As far as money goes, money, power, power, money, money, power, power, money, right? Always go together. So it's more about who's going to have the power, who's going to have the control over how we're rebuilding this society in the future. So that's the main focus of as we walk through the 8 book series of where we're going with it.
Now, is it 8 books because you just couldn't figure out how to end it, or did you already have a plan that this was going to be multiple volumes?
No, when I started it, I just wrote day after disaster. And then I was like, where do we go from here? So I started into, I also wanted to present a lot of wilderness survival for people to be able to learn how to do wilderness survival, but also stay enthralled with the story. And then re-entering, that's all book 3-ish. And then re-entering society, Walls of Freedom is like, what does this world look like now? And
Hmm.
so, yeah, so I just kept writing because I really enjoyed the characters and I really enjoyed being able to give people all this survival knowledge through this epic story. And then my last book, I was like, I'm going to start actively marketing this to Hollywood for a TV series. And I'm not going to be a Game of Thrones type scenario. I want the end on my book. But there was also a lot of pressure on my just with myself
Hmm.
because I didn't want it to be like a disappointing ending, right?
Hmm.
So I that book is a little bit longer because I just kept writing till I felt it was done.
Could have been book 9. You're risking book 9 there.
Yeah, it's a little bit thicker. And then I have 2 side stories. There's a bounty hunter that appears in my story. He becomes a major character. So I did his like origin story. That's Swenson. And there's a soldier that's pretty big in my stories. His name is Major Burgess. So he got his own side story as well.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's also an audible dramatization, or I'll put it under the category of radio theater.
It is radio theater. Yeah. So not a patient person and I like to constantly be pushing ahead. So I wanted to bring this story to life so bad. And I have this huge podcast community because I've had lots of people on my show and just had a lot of fun meeting great people there. And they all volunteered to do voices and we turned it into an audio drama. And so you can literally go and listen to the stories come alive.
Oh, very cool. I will do that because when I was in my early 20s, well, let's say 21, I was working for a station from the age of 19, and they wanted to start doing radio theater. I was their first producer, and of course, they had a director who was one of our volunteers at the radio reading service. And we'd bring the cast in and we'd do the script. We just record the script first. And and the very
Right.
first play we did was of the late Norman Corwin, and it's called The Moat Farm Murder. And I wish I still had the cassette tape or the reel to reel of that play. I have to tell you that it was a joy and a disappointment. The joy, of course, was that we put it together and it was so much fun to listen to. The disappointment was we spent 18 hours collectively in the control room producing, and this was also including the actors who, when we were adding the music and sound effects, they were not there. And
Right.
we did all this in post. And 18 hours produced a 33-minute production. And I was disappointed because, like, no, it should be longer because we
Uh-huh.
spent so much time in the studio.
Yeah.
But it was so much fun. I still remember one situation. It was a scene where the husband was digging a ditch, or he was digging a hole. It was actually the grave for his wife, who was standing right there asking him questions as to why he was digging a ditch. And he
Uh-huh.
was explaining. So I said, okay, you can't just read the script. You have to sound like you're digging. So you're not,
Uh,
well, it's the
yeah.
last time. Yeah.
Right.
And then we went outside after they had gone. We went out to, they were doing construction around the area of the station. And so back then we had an IBM Selectric and they had metal copy holders. So we didn't have a shovel. So we took that metal copy holder and a Marantz cassette deck and microphone. And we went out to the dirt pile, and I would dig in the dirt while the other person was holding the microphone. We took it
Yeah.
back in, and here was the amazing thing. You may have run into this in your production. When we synced up, and again, we're only using a reel to reel and 2 tracks. So the voices are on one track and the sound effects are on the other. When we synced up the shoveling sound, it miraculously synced up with his voice and his grunts and his, breathing and so forth. It was just so much fun.
Yeah. So it's a little bit more advanced now. Obviously, I have a little bit
Little.
more tools, right? A little bit more databases, just a little bit to draw upon. And now they just came out with more technology as far as AI voices and stuff, which I'm not 100% sold on. But some of them are getting pretty advanced. So I can't do AI voices with characters that are digging a hole because you
Right,
can't
right.
get AI voice to grunt and do those things. But when you have little side characters,
Sure.
they're really helpful, right? Because I don't have to put as much pressure on my performers. So it is about 2 hours of audio editing for every minute that you hear. So this is
Wow.
truly a labor of love. I spend a lot of nights up till 4 o'clock in the morning, making this show for everybody to listen to, mainly because I want to hear my stories come to life, which is, just so enthralling for me.
So
But
you're the
at
sole
this,
editor.
yes, yeah.
Wow.
And I
Great.
write the whole thing as well. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
5 seasons in. I've written every bit of script myself. The performers get their scripts. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
At their house, they record the lines, their part, they send them back to me.
Mm-hmm.
I take their line with the next person, make it into a conversation, and then add in all the audio and then add in the music to really help bring, an audio drama. You can't be like, look at that thing and it's a red ball out there with what we get with visual. You have to be like, look at the red ball out there. That's making me feel sad. So the music actually helps bring a lot of that tonality of where are the characters feeling, what is going on.
Wow. That is
Yeah,
very cool.
yeah, it's
That
definitely labor
is
love.
well, as soon as I dove into the software, the audio editing program that I've been using for, are we sitting down? 31 years. Started with a program called Cool Edit 1.5.3, a rather small program built by a company in Scottsdale, Arizona called Centrillium. Then Adobe bought it, and of course, it
Oh,
had its transformations beforehand to Cool Edit, Cool Edit Pro, Cool Edit 2000, and so forth. And now it's Adobe Audition. And as soon as I got into the multi-track portion of it, because I thought I don't have the time to learn multi-track, there's nothing more to learn because all of the same things you're using in the edit window are in the multi-track window. So just relax. But ever
yes.
since I got there, oh, it is such a blast to layer things and get them sounding the way you want. And each track you can have a different effect to the voice and so forth and so on. It's
Yeah,
just,
when I walk into the tunnel, I can do all the echoing of their voices and their
yeah.
steps and everything. I get a kick out of it as well.
Yeah.
It's like being a composer. It's
Yeah.
really
The
fun.
theater of the mind, as they say. Stan Freberg is one of my heroes. The late Stan Freberg. He put out a series called "The United States of America," and he had two, at least two. I think there might have been three, but the two I'm aware of are the United States of America, the early years, which actually goes back to right around the time of Christopher Columbus to probably shortly after the Revolutionary War. And then there's the middle years, which is from that point forward into the 1800s and maybe the early 1900s. And just the greatest satire that, oh, it's just, and it's like, boy, I would have loved to. Now, the difference between the way they did it and the way you and I do it now is, although when I was doing radio theater back in the 80s, the cast was in the room together and they worked off of each other. Today, you don't have that. And that to me, I think there is a loss I really do. The energy isn't going to be quite the same.
So we try to make it be, and through
Yeah.
me developing my script ability,
Hmm.
so I'm able to give them more cues on,
Mm.
I need you to sound this way when you're doing this.
Right.
There
Right.
are a couple of misses like that, but I have over 20 people say, if not more, that are all volunteering their time to just
Yeah.
read, just do it for me.
And very
So,
appreciative you are, I know,
right.
of the work they
Oh,
do, because
amen. Yeah, because
I was
I couldn't do
actually,
this without them.
well, I
But
was
like
part of a,
trying to synchronize the schedules,
oh yeah.
it's like wrangling cats. It's not gonna happen. So it's just so much more streamlined because I'm worried about the scripts and everybody getting it, getting back to me, and all that stuff. So yeah, so it's a
Yeah.
challenge just in that. But I don't disagree. It would be nice to be able to have them all together.
Mm.
Uh, the recording, because everybody has a different recorder too, right? From an iPhone to a great podcast setup. And
Hmm.
I have to try and make all that audio sound like they're standing in the same room.
Mm.
So that's a big challenge in and of itself,
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
right?
It's fascinating. We'll have more conversation about this. I want to remind you folks you are listening to Tell Me Your Story. We're talking with Sara Hathaway, and she has a book series, 8 books in all, that is basically the Changing Earth series. And of course, it's also available. I don't want to say it's available in Audible because it's not exactly the same thing. There's a cassette tape series that I have sitting here off to my side here that I bought back in 1990 called The Goal. And it's a dramatized version of the book by the author. I found it on Audible last October and I listened to it again. And I'm thinking, wow, this is very cool. Well, yours again, like you said, it's like radio theater. Well, so is this book and so forth. And it's just fascinating. The Changing Earth series, we hope that you will seek it out on Amazon. Give us a website we can send people to so they can find out more about you and the work that you're doing.
ChangingEarthSeries.com.
Oh my God, so easy.
So easy.
ChangingEarthSeries.com. Sara Hathaway, I'm Richard Dugan. This is Tell Me Your Story. We are talking here with Sara Hathaway about the work that she does in terms of creating this series called the Changing Earth series. And we certainly encourage you to go to her website as well. And Sara, it's fascinating, how we can be influencers without being influencers by doing what it is that we are doing. I mean, there are people who are online who that's what they call themselves. I'm an influencer.
Right. I'm an
And
influencer.
I'm going to influence you to buy this pair of glasses. No, 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 no.
No. No.
We're influencing by our thoughts, by what we have to say, our message, our vision, the work you're doing through the audio series, if you will, the theatrical version or dramatized version of your book series. What is your mission/vision?
I want to create prepared people. I want them to understand that we buy insurance for our homes for a reason. We have a spare tire in our car for a reason. And if we don't learn to take care of more of our necessities ourselves and be more self-reliant, then it leaves us very dependent on a system that is really just an illusion. So
Mm-hmm,
if
mm-hmm.
we are prepared people, then we make prepared communities, then we make prepared cities. And then if there's, like I say, global collapse, that kind of thing, global earthquake, just some, whatever's coming down the pipeline, we have the ability, if we were okay, to go and help those other people who weren't without having to call upon national resources and all of this stuff, just people helping people. And this doesn't have to be a global cataclysm. What
Mm-hmm.
if, your spouse loses their job? What if your spouse is in the hospital? What if you're in the hospital and your kids need to eat? Wouldn't it make sense to have a little bit of food on the shelf at home instead of worrying about going to the grocery store every single day? Wouldn't it be great to have a little bit of savings for that rainy day? We definitely invest in insurance. We definitely invest in these things because we know this is a huge investment and there's a chance that I could lose my house to a fire. So I have insurance, right? Well, there's a chance that, things could rapidly change in your life. And if you never thought about that day, you never considered like, oh my gosh, one day we might have to grow this food. Maybe I should plant a little tomato plant just outside my bucket to see what happens so I can start experimenting with that.
Mm.
So I understand, right? What would your role be if this society collapsed? What would your role be? Would you be there to help people medically? Would you be there to grow food? Would you be there to provide defense? Would you be there to help teach kids? How do you see yourself in that type of environment? At least do the thought exercise on it. And one
Yeah.
of the most exciting things that happened when I first was selling my book, we did booths at this Founders Day up in Georgetown, California. And one of my author friends she just never heard about, country living and things like that, even though she kind of did. And she had a book that was what dog name to pick, what name to pick for your dog. And here I am selling Day After Disaster. And so she asked me, oh, can I get a copy of her book? Sure. So she starts reading my book. She's like, this is so outside of my wheelhouse. I've never thought about anything like this before. This is great. And then after COVID hit, she contacted me a year later and said, hey, Sara, because of your book, because she only has one lung. So
Mm.
because of your book, I was prepared. I didn't have to go to the grocery store. Well, I was, at risk of getting this disease, which would have threatened my one lung. And because of your book, this is where I was. And that to me is worth more than all the money in the world. Anybody I can help to make it through a rainy day, anybody that I can help to help stay self-defense ready, protect them from that incident that could change their life forever just by a few certain steps. And I have the skills, the knowledge, the ability to share. So that's definitely what I'm out there trying to do. Just help people understand they have control of their life, like your book, The Choices, right? They have the choice to make. You can choose to stick your head in the sand, or you can choose to be ready.
Mm. We had a program on our station here in Santa Barbara called Community Alert. Positive preparation, not if, but when disaster strikes. When my wife and I moved here from Phoenix, we have what's called a valley view. We're sitting up on top of the mountain. They called it the San Ynez mountain range, and I'm looking north, or ostensibly north. And I see, this is in 2006, the summer, and I see this tiny, tiny, tiny little puff of smoke way off in the distance. However, I have no points of reference. I don't know where it is. I don't know how far away it is. And of course, and talking about chickens earlier, I started running around like a chicken with his head cut off. I didn't know who to call. I didn't know what to do, where to go, da 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 da. And of course, it turns out, in the long and the short of it is, we were in no danger. They had the fire out shortly, and it was probably 40, 50, 60 miles away, which may or may not mean anything. If the winds are blowing, it doesn't mean a thing.
Right.
It could be right next door.
Yeah.
And then the following year, these gentlemen who live up here on the mountain in different areas, they started that program, Community Alert. And they started talking about getting prepared and having a go bag and on and on and on. And then, of course, the big thing right now, of course, with all the rains we've had, is hardening your house, which I thought was an interesting phrase, but that's the phrase they use. Cutting down the weeds 100 feet out. And then, of course, cleaning your gutters and doing all of those things, preparation, so that if an ember were to float in the area, it wouldn't ignite anything.
Correct. Yeah.
And so as I began to learn more and more over the years, over the 19 years that we've been here, when I see a puff of smoke and I can recognize if it's white, I know it's being put out, or they elected a new pope. I'm not sure which, but anyway. If it's gray, it's probably just started, and whatever's burning is burning like crazy.
Right.
I don't get scared anymore because I know what I need to do. What I get now is I get angry or frustrated because they say that 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans.
Yeah, human activity.
And
Yeah.
someone did something that they didn't prepare ahead of time. We've had fires that were started by gentlemen working on ranches to the west of us in the valley. They were welding some fencing. They had no water or fire suppression with them, just in case. And
Right.
boom, we had a fire that started in 2007 that went on for a month.
Mhm.
And it almost came literally into our backyard. But these are the kinds of things that you are wanting to share with people on all the different levels. And I'm kind of in agreement with you. I have to ask myself, why would you, after being blown out by a tornado in Tornado Alley, 2, 3, 4 times, would you rebuild or get another trailer? Now, and
The
again,
exact same footprint. Yeah.
your comment about why are we still building with wood and sticks
Yeah.
instead of stone, and I'm sure there's plenty of it. It sometimes it just doesn't make sense, and you sit there and you hear about the complaints by people in regards, for example, over the years, I'm sure you've heard this in regards to FEMA. Now, in some instances, people had great experiences, but in other instances, they didn't.
Right.
Hurricane Katrina, you saw all those people on the roofs of houses. Help,
So,
help, help. Go ahead.
yeah. So a big misunderstanding with FEMA is that when I am in a natural disaster, FEMA is coming to save me. FEMA doesn't give a two hoots about you as an individual. What FEMA is there to do is FEMA is there to get big systems back online.
Mm-hmm.
They're there to shore up levees, make sure they're contained. They're there to bring power back online, to make sure roadways are open. They're there to ensure the societal flow of that area
Mm-hmm.
can continue.
Okay.
You, as an individual, they don't care. They're not there to rescue you from your housetop. That's just the plain and simple. We have to
So
understand that we have to be responsible for that ourselves.
so has the role of FEMA, regardless of what's going on in Washington today, has the role of FEMA been increased to provide those white trailers for people that was not their role, because that's taking care of individuals, not taking care of the infrastructure?
Exactly. Yeah. They were there originally designed for infrastructure. And now they're expected to be like everybody's nanny when
Yeah.
disaster hit.
Yeah.
Well, one of the biggest groups that fed people in Hurricane Katrina was biker gangs that came in to help. Right? It wasn't FEMA.
Wow.
Yeah. And actually FEMA put everybody into the stadium,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I interviewed a gal who's on the DMAT, the Disaster Medical Assistance Team, that were in the Superdome, right, trying to provide medical assistance to these people. One of her medics was actually shot. They had to be
Wow.
life flighted from the top. They pulled all the medicals peoples out because there was actually more crime and whatnot happening and violence happening within the Superdome than there was outside of it. So
Mm.
another main mission that, don't depend on FEMA. Don't go to a FEMA camp.
Right.
That's not, you should have the resources and the wherewithal to be able to help yourself and figure
Mhm.
that situation out without being dependent upon a government institution to tell you what's best for you.
And that raises a question we're going to ask of our guest, Sara Hathaway, as we continue talking about her book series, the Changing Earth series, here on Tell Me Your Story. The next subject we're going to dive into, that you took us towards, onto the threshold thereof, is, boy, a lot of people don't like this, community,
Right.
creating a network. Oh, but wait a minute. I have the First Amendment right to do what I want, when I want, where I want, how I want, to whom I want. It doesn't matter because I have that right. And it's like, but coming with that individual right is also individual responsibility. During COVID, when it was first brought up and we were shut down, and people started complaining about how their First Amendment rights were being usurped. And I'm going, I don't, I'm not experiencing, I don't know where you're getting that. If you think that's the case, that's your perception, because the reality is, guess what? To you, they're being usurped. For me, I'm exercising my First Amendment by washing my hands, putting a mask on, and staying at least 6 feet away from someone. And I did that for a while, and I was still going to work because I was only one going into the office. So then, there's no risk. But it seems to me that there's this, I don't want to say a misinterpretation, but a misperception of what rights we claim that we have. Because even from a biblical standpoint, to whom much is given, much is expected, i.e., you are now responsible. And once you hear something, for example, or see it, you can't unhear it or you can't unsee it.
Right.
So now you have to deal with it. So talk to us, especially in light of the story, but also in terms of your personal, shall we call it preparedness, so that you can thrive while waiting for the next event to take place.
Yes.
Talk to us about that, the aspect of responsibility if you're going to live in this society, and juxtaposing that with, again, that individualistic aspect.
So I don't think that individual freedom can exist without that responsibility and without the moral values that are brought to us from God, our creator, and Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see somebody who decides what their own value system is. Now they have control over that. And it's hard to work with. It's hard to not have a standardized process there.
Yeah.
So when COVID happened, I was one of the individuals who was like, hey, everyone, I get that this might be a bad deal. Okay. I get that there's a threat out there. However, I also don't trust our powers that be, so to
Okay.
speak.
Mm-hmm.
I don't trust because follow the money, right? So there's certain, I don't want to be naming names, but there's certain companies that had just gone through one of the biggest lawsuits ever for falsifying products, for having bad products on the market. And now they were going to be everybody's savior. I had a hard time just eating that and being like, okay, I'm just going to trust you. As a critical thinker and somebody who studies, history, relevance of what's going on, I'm going to research whatever's going on. I had a hard time just being like, oh, yeah, that sounds good.
Mm-hmm.
Also grew up in Catholic school. And yeah, I was told what I had to have on my body
Yeah.
all the time. And I was told, as a girl who was a tomboy, I
Mm-hmm.
was told what I was supposed to wear and how I was supposed to act. And these types of things so when they started saying, okay, well, you have to wear this and you have to do that, I had a hard time just eating that as an American I'm free.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that we are free, and you're free to swing your arms as much as you want to swing your arms until your arms start smacking me. And that's where your freedom ends and my freedom begins. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm free to walk without your arms smacking me. Right. So I think that we have delved way too far into identifying who we are as individuals just because of what we've been told we're supposed to be. And we've lost a lot of that ability to critically think.
Mm-hmm.
You can't look at one side or another and go, this is really good and this is really bad. And this side is really good here and this side's really bad. And if you can't look at every single really decision that we're faced with, then you are brainwashed. You've just been told what you're supposed to believe, and now you're going to go along with it because that's what you believe your identity is. So I would encourage people to increase their relationship with the Lord and really find out, like, who did God put me on this earth to be?
Yeah.
He knows exactly how many hairs you have on your head. That's kind
Yeah.
of easy in your case, but but he's got the answers. And
Mm-hmm.
for too long we've been like, oh well, I identify as this, so I can't even accept that message.
Mm-hmm.
I can't even open that book. I can't even look at that thing because that's who I'm identifying as. And I think that's really sad. Also, I think our community has become this internet thing,
Hmm.
not our neighbors, not who our people are that are living right around us, not who we're meeting down at the local store, at the local bar, at the local gathering place, church, whatever you want to do.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that becomes like this echo chamber of like, well, because they told me I'm supposed to be that way. Look, all these other people believe they're that way too. So that's great. That's just what I'm going to do and not pay attention to what the real world issues are.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much that we're talking about that's just irrelevant
Yeah.
compared to what we're looking at the future of our planet, how we're going to
Hmm.
survive these things, where's our food going to come from. We can't just be like, oh, well, the systems are in place. They're always going to be there forever. Now we can just worry about all this stuff that really doesn't matter in the
Hmm.
long
Yeah.
run.
You raised the juxtaposition that I would pose occasionally throughout that 3 year period, 3.5 year period. Okay, I understand the First Amendment. I get that. I understand the individualism, but it also says in the preamble to promote the general welfare and preserve the blessings of liberty to ourselves and who? Who's our posterity? Our children.
Uh-huh.
So that's where community comes into the mix and weighing. And I know that a lot of people really struggled with this. I didn't because I understood my role. I am not going to get close to anybody during this period of time for the time being until I feel comfortable. And of course, the other person as well. They don't want me next to them. I will
Right.
keep my distance.
Yeah.
Um,
That's your decision as an individual.
exactly. And I'm because it's like it's kind of like taking personal responsibility if you inadvertently through no intention on your part injure or kill someone because you're, I don't know, driving your car or doing target practice with a bow and arrow or a firearm or whatever the case might be. um there is a responsibility that we have to take when it comes to our community. And it doesn't mean we give up our individualism, our individual aspect. I think that a lot of people, that was the misconception. And this is just my perception, and I'd love to hear your perspective on it as well. Is that you can have and do both. You can be an individual all you want, and it's like that airplane issue. Put the mask on yourself first, individual, then help others, community. It's not that hard to figure out instead of being so militant about it, that you actually end up actually stirring up the waters of aggravation and resentment towards yourself because because the perception is you're only thinking about you and you don't
Mhm.
care about anybody else. And I'm not speaking to you specifically. I know that.
Right.
You know
Right.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's plenty of individuals that was their drive. It was just
Yeah.
to stir it up and just be that problem child. So respect for
Yes.
everybody that
Mm-hmm.
is involved.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you want to buy it hook, line, and sinker. Cool. I won't stand by you. You're gonna tell me that I need to put this on my face. I have a problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
I just won't do business at that place, right?
Sure.
Because honestly, and looking back at it now, you can't, you know, tell me that the science wasn't all the way there. And as a critical thinker, I didn't have that reference point of like that. There was a lot of very, very intelligent doctors and professionals in their field
Mm-hmm.
that were coming out on a different wavelength than what they wanted to be socially accepted at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And those people were silenced. So to me, as soon as your mission, your goal for society is silencing other people and
Yeah.
their opinion as professionals, I have a problem because
Yeah.
I think open, honest debate is the best way to solve any problem. And when you're saying No, no, you have to believe my way, and you can't even listen to those professionals. We're not even giving them a platform. We're not putting them on the news. We're not going to hear what they have to say. We're taking them
Yeah.
off all social media. I have a problem with that. Why can't we hear that? Why?
Yeah.
What is so bad about
Yeah.
listening to all sides of the story and then coming up with an educated decision? What's best for me, my
Yeah.
family, my community?
It raises another perspective as well. We'll talk about and that we dive into quite often. We'll do that in a moment. Sara Hathaway is my guest. Her book is called The Changing Earth Series, and of course, it's also I like to say dramatized. I think that's very cool. You can go to the website where you can listen to that particular book, and it's actually. Let's see here, author sarahathaway.com, where you can go and you can listen to the Changing Earth series. It's available on YouTube. It's available at Amazon. The books are also, of course, available at Amazon as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. This is a program that is very interesting. It is all about our perspectives. Okay, Sara's perspective and my perspective. We don't have all the answers. I never said I ever did. I will never ever say that I ever have had all the answers. I'm trying to figure this out just like everybody else. Okay, and one of the things that I find interesting in that juxtaposition, in terms of moving forward in our conversation, and this came up in my last interview, having to do with our life's purpose. Now, you are prepared, your family's prepared in whatever fashion, whatever way you have chosen. At the same time, you're an author, you're a mother, you're a wife, you have all of these other roles. Okay. Um, you have a life's purpose, a focus and or vision for your life, shall we say, in general. Because I know that depending upon what you're talking about, well, yeah, on that subject, this is my focus. On that subject, this is my focus.
Right.
When we're talking about an individual versus a family versus a community, a city, a state, or a nation, the question that I have come to want to ask, what is the purpose? What is the life purpose of the individual? What's the purpose of the family? What's the purpose of the community? The purpose of the city, the state? What is the purpose? What is the nation's purpose? Because the last time, and I was very young when this happened, the last time we had a purpose that I can recall that was of a positive, constructive nature was the Apollo program and going to the moon. Landing them. That was the last time that we as a society, we were all watching the TV in July of 1969. I was 9 years old. Now, some would say, well, yeah, 9/11. No, that wasn't a constructive purpose.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
Okay.
It was reactive.
We were creating something in 69. And we had of course, then there was the shuttle program. We had a couple of disasters there. I was still following it and so forth, but it wasn't quite the same. We didn't have one of our leaders saying, "Hey, what do you think about us doing this?" You know,
Yeah.
let's forget about the Panama Canal. Let's build a canal from the East Coast to the West Coast. Okay,
Right.
going through the Continental Divide. Let's build a canal, and then we can take shipping right through and.
The heartland.
I've just thrown up an idea, but
Right.
that's kind of where I'm coming from with this question to you, and you can address whatever levels that you want. We already know, I think, a cursory what your life's purpose is because you're living it, you're sharing it with us.
Yes.
But can you take it to some of those new levels because they keep talking about this, the great American experiment. Some people say it has failed. Past tense, it has failed. Other people say, we're still
kind of swirled up, right? A little bit swirled up.
yeah, and so on and so forth. Give us your perspective.
I wouldn't say it's failed. I would say we're in an interesting period right
Yes.
now. As a community, I would love to see so everything's gone so nationalized and now globalized. I would love to see some of the food growing, some of that come back to local areas so
Hmm.
that we are in touch with right where our product came from. It's not traveling 1,800 miles. It doesn't have to have this chemical on it so it doesn't ripen. It doesn't have to have that so it stays preserved, right? So as a community, one of the things I'm really jazzed about and I'd love to like invest a lot more money in is bringing food growing back local. It's like even in the 1903 earthquake in San Francisco, they
Hmm.
lost half the cattle population.
Wow.
Cattle in San Francisco, right? Well, they weren't in San Francisco, but they were right over on
Right.
the other side of that bridge,
Hmm.
right? They were right there. It was all just coming locally sourced. So we got great product, and there's no reason we couldn't go back to something like that. And there's no reason a company couldn't be a global company and still be having fields right outside of your town to be able to help you out. So that's how I feel about food.
Hmm.
I love your take though, because I've been saying the same thing. Like, a lot of my religious friends are like, well, everybody just needs to find Jesus. Well, you know what? Not everybody's going to find Jesus. You, you're not going to have ears to hear. You're not going to have eyes to see. I accept that. That's my choice. Your choice is your choice. But we need some kind of a goal of that we can come together as a world even and be
Hmm.
like, this is what we're gonna do with our resources instead of just fighting over them. And he's like, well, it's too expensive, blah blah. Well, people are gonna spend money anyway. I think going to Mars. Honestly, I think the goal of putting a colony on Mars, having it, populated by, love to see the world come together on it, don't get me wrong. But I think that like we are expansive people.
Yeah.
We want to find that next frontier and do that next thing. And so I say we're kind of swirled up. We're in a slump because there's not really any place to go. We could go to the bottom of the ocean, but that's more difficult, honestly, than going out into space.
Well, yeah.
So, right? To
They
some extent,
both present challenges. There's quite
real
no question.
challenges. Right. So, to me, I think that the next great thing that humanity could do is go out to Mars, just because that's our closest one. That's achievable. We could be like, we're setting this goal and we're going to make it by this time and really drive for it. And then I'd love to, there's all kinds of theories about being able to take planets that don't have life on them and like send certain meteors at them. I can't remember exactly what the name's called, and I'm sure I'd slaughter it if I did. But you can send certain meteors and whatnot at the planets to hit them and then be able to populate it with DNA, be able to populate it with water, that kind of thing. So to terraform,
Terraform. There you go.
transforming,
Hmm.
right? Yeah, so that we could actually start terraforming new planets out there. I mean, it'd be easier to build space systems in
Sure.
space than it is launching it through the atmosphere.
Yeah.
And I just think that's really our next frontier. And we need to just like quit with as much anger as we have going, as much division as we have going. It's just really silly. Because if you sit down and talk to 90% of people, as long as they have an open heart and you have an open heart, you're going to come to a middle ground.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's nobody that I haven't been able to sit down at a table with and be like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I see your point at least.
Yeah.
Right.
And to your terraform position, I like the idea as long as it is not in an effort to leave this planet because we haven't taken care of it. Let's
Yeah.
use the same technology that we're going to send out there to terraform. Let's do some terraforming here too.
Yeah.
Both and both
Yeah.
and.
Yeah. Let's
Uh,
clean up some of the trash. We
oh,
should not have a trash island out in
no.
the ocean. Again, follow the money. There's just not the money there. Like, I'm sure if it was gold out floating in the ocean, that stuff would be gone.
Oh
Right.
yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
nobody has
Well, and
perfect.
interestingly enough, there are those who are actually working to sort of perform a form of alchemy with all of that in turning it into gold of a sort
Mhm.
to where they will gather it up and then they will process it in such a way. I know certain elements of it, then it has to be separated, but certain elements of it, like the plastics that are ground up, and they use it for insulation.
That's exactly in my books.
Yeah.
They take the plastics of the old world and melt it down to like this bead system, and then they just print and create all these new homes. They're little pod homes, and
Yeah.
they create homes out of them. Like, I mean, come on, we
Yeah.
can definitely do something like this. We're
Yeah.
just
By the
The
way, the brick and
not
mortar buildings, as far as disasters and so forth, my favorite structure would be a cave built into dug into the side of a mountain. Okay.
I almost said it earlier when you were talking about the
Yeah.
tornado. I
Yeah.
was like, why wouldn't you have just like the cave on Earth and system like the hobbits? I mean,
Yeah.
they're beautiful inside,
Well, in
but
Ireland, they have these mounds. One of them is called Newgrange. My wife and I have been there. We've been inside, and it is nothing more than a big old mound that's been built up. And you actually do go down into the chamber. You're not at ground level. You're now below ground level inside the
it
chamber.
helps keep it cool.
It stays cool in the winter and warm in the summer. And that
Yep.
would be ideal for these places like where my hometown, Phoenix, where it just gets too doggone hot. That's why I don't live there anymore. It's just, I don't want the heat. I don't like the heat. And it gets kind of warm here in Central California too sometimes, but at least, 8 or 9 months out of the year, it's very nice, very pleasant. I wish everyone could experience it. And at the same time, I know there are people who like the heat. So I say, you can have my spot in Arizona.
Right? You do you. I'll do
You
me.
do you,
Yeah.
I'll do me,
Love
and
that.
we'll have a great time. Sarah Hathaway,
Yeah.
my guest here on the program. You were going to share something else.
Oh no, I was just saying the Earth and systems are phenomenal. I'm glad you brought that up because
Oh yeah.
that's
Uh,
definitely a viable. Then you have all the space as well for growing area for
you could
raising
grow on top of the structure. Huh. Take one of
exactly.
those geodesic domes, all right, and you dig down maybe 2, 3, 4 feet, put the geodesic dome inside that, and then start building up the berm all around it,
Yep.
building the dirt up until you get over the top. And I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that we have plenty of earth to do that with. It's just we really need to. And I don't ever get into conversations with people about climate change. I say, forget about it. I don't care about the science. We
Yeah.
need to clean up our home.
Right.
But I'm with you. We are explorers. We are always looking for new things. Why did you climb Mount Everest? Oh, because it was there.
Because I wanted to.
Why did you
Yeah.
go to Mars? Because it was there.
Hmm.
I think it's great, and I think that's a wonderful thing that we can do to find new places that we can colonize for the purposes more so of exploration,
Right.
as opposed to migration. I
Or
just
mining,
yeah.
mineral extraction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, we've messed up this planet. Let's not mess up another one. First let's take care of this one. But at the same time, yeah, we can do multiple things at the same time, folks. We can.
We're
It's not.
intelligent creatures. We just have
We are. We're talking with Sara Hathaway, and boy, there's just so many things we can talk about. We've already talked about a lot of different things as well, and this has been a lot of fun. Give us that website one more time so that people can
Changing
go.
Earth Series. So don't worry
Changing
about
Earth
all my
Series.
author. That one's too long.
Okay.
ChangingEarthSeries.com.
And that'll get you to that place where you can also listen to the
Yes,
drama.
sir. That is my hub, ChangingEarthSeries.com. You're going to see all my books. You're going to see the nonfiction podcast. You're going to see the dramatization podcast, all my social media links. It is Sarah's hub for sure.
Now,
Changing Earth.
the series is 8. What are the other 2 books? As it says here, you have 10 books.
2 side novels. So, like I
Side
said, I
novels.
had the Bounty Hunter that everybody loved to hate.
Oh,
So he
that's
got
right.
his origin story, and then that Major Vergis, the soldier, he got his like kind of his side of the story. Honestly, I created that book because there was new content in the audio drama. And so I figured why not just make it into another
Why
book?
not? And his name is not Daug, the bounty
What?
hunter. Daug,
Oh
the
no,
bounty.
no, 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 no. It's TJ Swenson. Yeah, but similar. Similar. Yeah, he doesn't like to kill people. He
Right.
likes to collect them. And he
Ah,
likes to psychologically manipulate people. So that's really his shtick.
all right. Well, folks, find your way to changingearthseries.com. We'll be linked to that website so people can find out more about you and the books you've written, the dramatization, I'll call it, radio theater. We certainly are looking forward. I'm looking forward to listening to it. And of course, I don't listen to things like that the same way everybody else does because I'm listening to it from an engineer's standpoint, you know?
That's why I was honored when you were like, "Oh, not bad." I was like, "Oh, all
Yeah,
right, all right,"
yeah, I
because
liked it. I
I'm
really did.
incredibly self-taught, like
Yeah,
100%.
what I've and congratulations on that. I will also say, and I know you will acknowledge this too, as far as your life is concerned, that we are both beholden to a lot of people for where we are today. Maybe the person who introduced you to that sound editing, or the idea for the story that
Yeah.
you created. Parents especially, obviously we wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. So I'm glad that they had you and brought you up to where we are today. And thank you so much for being a part of Tell Me Your Story. I do have three final questions that I do want to ask you, that I ask all of my guests.
Okay.
But first, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We're here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. And we're streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. Podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Spreaker, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. We're on YouTube where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will. And I also hope that you will go to Amazon and you will get yourself a copy of Choices, 5 Steps for Life in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle. Audible, I'm working on it, folks. I'm trying to get it loaded, and it's coming soon. And if you'd like to leave us a tip, we would appreciate it. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And guess what? You go to richarddugan.com, and right there at the top of the page, there are two links. One to Amazon for the book Choices, and the other to PayPal for the tip. And also, we ask that you take some time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within and listen to that still small voice. Now, there's a subject that we could have dove into as well. Sarah, maybe next time we'll have you back and talk about that aspect. But we'll go now to our final three questions and ask, who is Sara Hathaway?
Well, I'm a fighter, I'm a mother, I'm a wife, and I'm an entrepreneur.
What gets you up in the morning?
Um, wow, that's a good one. The Lord above, first of all, because I always say thank you every morning for getting me up in the morning.
Mhm.
And chores, my workout, putting together my stories. I just love creating. It really brings me a lot of joy.
And finally, what was your best day?
My best day was the day I met my husband. I was actually hitchhiking home from work, and he picked me up, and I wouldn't let him drop me off at my house, but I didn't know what was going to come of that, and he just kept coming back into the store, and he is my everything and my greatest support, and so that day changed my whole life forever.
Well, fantastic. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for giving us the time to talk about the work that you're doing. Yeah, we ought to have you back to talk a little bit more about. Actually, it's kind of like interesting how we kind of skirted the issue of our immortal selves in this mortal world, and so forth. So maybe we'll have you back to talk more about that from your perspective.
I'd be honored. That'd be great.
All right. Well, I thank you again, and I thank you folks for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. And until our next broadcast, podcast, video cast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for letting me be in your life. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.